If all your designs look like this boring cookie cutter web design template and you want to make something that looks more unique, this video is for you. Hey y'all, what's up? Gary Simon here. So today I'm going to talk about a layout building technique, if you will, and how I like to approach building layouts that I think is really going to help a lot of you break out of the typical hero section with the center text, or even just standard boring web designs that you see everywhere. And then this technique will really help you branch out and be able to create your own unique layouts, layouts perhaps that some people have never seen before, and also make sure, while doing so, that you are adhering to good, solid UI design fundamentals. All right, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and let's get started. Before we begin, Linode makes it easy and affordable to host your website, your portfolio, your online store, and more on whatever technology stack you use. Getting up and running is fast and easy with one-click app installs like WordPress and Drupal. With back-end access to your server, customization and scaling options are all but limitless. If you just need something small like an online portfolio to showcase your work, Linode has you covered. If you need to manage tons of clients' websites and reliably serve them to millions of visitors, Linode can do that too. So sign up using the link below in the description to get $20 in credit on your new Linode account. All right, so here I am in Adobe Xd. You can use whatever app you wish, it doesn't matter. And I want you to start thinking about when you're constructing a layout, boiling it down to something more simple, and you can call them blocks or you can call them containers. And a block or a container is created when you add any element that has high enough contrast. So you're probably confused on what I mean, but let me just show you maybe just a couple examples, or an example to show you what I'm talking about. So think about, for instance, a button. Just a simple button where it has, it's like maybe it's a rectangle with rounded corners, whatever, with some text inside of it. Let's just get that out. So we'll put a button here near the middle. We'll get rid of the border. We'll give it a background color like that, something high contrast with the background. And this right here is a container. It's a container of sorts, right? We can stick something inside of it. Sometimes, if it's a small button, like a square button, you have an icon in it. If it's like this, perhaps you'll have text in it. Sometimes you can have text and the icon. Either way, this is a container, and whenever you're going to put something inside of this container, you have to adhere to basic design fundamentals. Those basic design fundamentals are contrast. So if we put something in here that's meant to be read, like type, for instance, or an icon, it needs to have a lot of contrast based on the container's background color. In this case, it's a button background color, right? So contrast is one. Color is another one. You want to make sure that you're using colors that complement each other well and work well as well. Another, so outside of color and contrast, is scale. You don't want to put anything that's meant to be read, for instance, like type or an icon, too small or too large. Alignment or proximity, that's also very important. For instance, if we add some type like my button, we can nail all the other design fundamentals, but if one of them are off, such as proximity or alignment, it just throws the whole thing off. So we're going to make it white so that color and contrast is taken care of, because white in this instance on a darker background is 100% contrast. We're making it contrast as much as possible. But proximity or alignment, you can use those interchangeably. I think I'll just refer to it as proximity. If we stick the button up there, it just looks absolutely ridiculous, right? So that's another design fundamental, which is proximity. Another one would be visual hierarchy, which we can't really illustrate that here. Visual hierarchy comes into play when you have multiple elements on the same layout. And those are basically the fundamentals. So it's color and contrast, scale, visual hierarchy, proximity. And I might be forgetting one in the back of my mind. But every time you make a decision in terms of building your layout, like we're going to do, you have to think in terms of blocks. All right, and along with all those UI design fundamentals for each block that you create. And then visual hierarchy comes into play when you're looking at the big picture, which is the layout, which is just a bunch of blocks that's attached together. So let's create a layout with this in mind. So I'm gonna go like a dark UI for this one. So we're gonna choose like a darker background color, not quite black, maybe right around there, 1C, 1C, 1C. And we'll have next usually when I start on a layout, if I'm going for desktop or even just mobile, I want a I want to put my headline on there. You don't always have to do that. It's just like a personal preference. So I'm going to put choosing a color. Yeah, maybe we'll do this color scheme. All right. So I'm going to enlarge this, make it larger. All right, we'll put it right there. I'm going to choose a different font this time. A font I've never used on this channel before. I know we're going crazy here near 2020. And that font is Nusa Next STD. I kind of like it. It has several different weights, light and medium. I think we'll choose medium for this. And let's take our line height just in a little bit. And like I said, we have one block to begin with, right? And that is the canvas itself. That is a block. When we create another element, like this, for instance, this little headline, which I decided to put it on 2 lines. It doesn't matter. That's not necessarily a requirement. You can put it on 1 line, whatever. You've essentially created another block. And I'm not talking about just the headline itself. Yeah, this is a block. We can see the outline when I select it, right? Because it's a text layer. Yeah, that's a block. But the block actually can help extend vertically and horizontally. So here's what I'm talking about. This is just temporary. I just want to illustrate what I'm talking about. We have a block here that's created. Take this opacity down. And then also we have a block here that's created in terms of basically these columns and these rows that are created when you create a block. So you don't see these, right? You don't see these explicitly unless you integrate them to the actual design. But really what you end up seeing, I'll pull down a guide here, is at the bottom of this type, we see this, if I move this down, we see a clear sort of path that's created. And that helps out your alignment big time when you're trying to add other elements or in relation to this particular block. So if I want to have like a sub headline, for instance, I'll just do choosing a color scheme. Yeah, it's not very difficult like you may think or something. And we'll put this down a lot and maybe we'll make it regular. All right, and we want to align this on the same exact path if we were to put it to the right, for instance, as that would help us a lot. So if I remove that now, maybe we'll make this a little bit larger. We can suddenly see that this just seems to flow a lot better than, say, something like this. It's off slightly. You could perhaps center it within that invisible block, or you could perhaps put it up here, but I think personally it might look best here. So that's just one example of what I'm talking about when I say blocks, for instance. So for this choosing a color scheme, I'm going to have an actual kind of like a paragraph. I think we'll just put it right here. And we're going to put it right on this invisible line where you can see at the very left of the C and the other C from choosing and color. It's going to start right there on that vertical path. Now, for now, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go to my plugins. I'm going to go to, let's see, Lorem Ipsum, fill with placeholder. That's a, Lorem Ipsum is a plugin you can get. And let me bring this up. Let's make this light, I think. Put it right around there. So right there, it's pretty solid in my opinion. It works. Now let's try to add in just a random element of some sort, like a random block. So I'm just going to draw out, I'm going to hold shift and create a, I don't know, a square. And this square I'll just put maybe right here, and then I'll put, we'll give it some color perhaps. So it's like a kind of like a pinkish color. There we go. And then let's just duplicate this. Maybe we'll put it right here, right next to it perhaps. I want them to be the same size, so I'm going to take them both and scale them up. Let's choose like a different color for this one. Maybe like a tan or something. Right there. Okay. So right here, we've created 2 blocks essentially. And because they're high contrast, we can see that if we were to add those different overlays, you would see that, actually I can just drag down a guide I'll drag down multiple. Right here is a block that's been created in this section right here. You can also see where it says choosing a color scheme, it's kind of interceded this block right here in this vertical line. So we have some options. So first of all, we'll forget about this one for a second. If we really want to align this as much as possible and try to really create good alignment and proximity, we can try to align this particular piece of type, this Lorem Ipsum type, so that there's equal amount of white space or negative space. It's the empty space around your elements and inside of your blocks and outside of them. On the top, like above it, and also below it. All right, so that's very important, and it will really help just kind of make your layout look a lot more professional and just flow better. So we have this one aligned up here. So what are we going to do with this one? Well, we have, let's say this is where we want our type to be. We could pull out another a vertical guide. We could see it starts here. So it would probably be a good idea to make this one start there as well. So now, should this go maybe in the middle of this block? Well, I kind of want to have a logo at the top. So that's going to create another block section at the top. But what we can really do is we could probably just put this right on the baseline, and that's okay because this block and this block have the same background color. And so this is still going to have white space beneath it, if that makes sense. So if we get rid of our guides here, we can see now this actually seems like a cohesive layout. We could perhaps make this a little bit longer so that it fills out this particular block a little bit more because we've created this just random design element over here. This could be, by the way, a photograph. It could be any number of things. It could contain its own content inside of it. It all depends on your individual needs. Let me go ahead. If you really want to, by the way, this isn't really about layouts and the purpose of this tutorial, but if you really want to emphasize one type element over another, like this, we've already done it through scale, right? So your eye is immediately going to see this headline instead of this one, right? Because it's a lot smaller. But you can even further reinforce that through contrast. So we could take this and we could take their fill. We can maybe take the background color and then just, oh, it's already gray. So we can just go up a bit. And you want to make sure that you do at least adhere to the WCAG 2.0 color contrast guidelines. There is a plugin called Stark, which, let's see here, check contrast. We could do rapid contrast checker. All right, so we could see this already passes the test. It's a 7.77. I did a video on this, by the way, if you want to search my channel for that. So we've created a layout that works. I wanted to get a logo. So let's just put a logo. I've called this, I don't know, 2020. It's just a fake logo. And we could probably stand to move things over a bit just because there was a lot of space on this side. And it still works, the changes we made, because we weren't moving them up or down. And let's also maybe put a, like a quick navigation, maybe just like about. There we go. So sometimes, you know, playing around with the alignment, you want to get them correct as possible. And now our blocks have been a little bit rearranged. So we could take this, push this back down on that baseline right there. And then this can come here. And let me push this up just a bit. There we go. So a little bit more filled out. Or we could do the opposite and bring this down. And there we go. We have an interesting, unique layout that kind of goes beyond, you know, the boring, typical layouts that you're used to. Now, remember what I said about contrast. If there's an element that contrasts enough, then it creates a block. But if it doesn't contrast a lot, you really have a lot of freedom because then it essentially becomes a watermark. So to give you an a demonstration of that, let's just say I have a big typewriter that says color. And we make this really large. I don't know, like that or something. And let's say we really take down the opacity down to like 3% if it's pure white, which is what it was. We can now kind of just put this anywhere and it doesn't distract, it doesn't screw up any of the other elements. As soon as we take this and push it up a lot, then it becomes way too much. And that's what I always see beginning UI designers getting wrong. That is just having too much contrast in elements that should be more like watermarks in the background. So really in this case, you have a lot of freedom in terms of where you might want to put an element like this. So let's take a look at another example. I think we'll stick with the same color scheme, but this time we'll do a little bit more unique, perhaps risky things. And I'll show you exactly what I mean here in a second. So I think we'll keep this, the headline, or not the headline, the logo in the navigation. This time, let's just put, sometimes it's all a matter of just experimenting random stuff, like just, okay, I'm going to slap a big block right here, a container, and how can I make this work? So let's get our fill. We'll use the same color scheme as I said. So we just put like this big random block there. How could we ever make something like this work? So I think we'll use the same headline here. And let me duplicate that, bring it over. All right. So again, we've already created several blocks here. So we have this vertical column that's created from right where the logo started. So it makes sense to put this right here as well. Now, I'm also doing something a little bit different though, because I've created this high contrast element with a block, but this is also a high contrast element. But I'm choosing to, and this is something that we've seen in recent design trends, to intersect the type and overlap it on top of another block of a high contrast block. As this will work with large type, as long as the type, the different backgrounds that it's sitting on. We can see it's this dark black one here, and then there's this pinkish sort of background. As long as the type itself will contrast with both of them, and the type has to be large. For instance, like if we made this real small, like a paragraph, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to read. Like if I brought this over, let's move that for a second. Oops, there we go. Let's bring this over here. It's like that is hard to read, so you generally want to avoid doing that as much as possible. So we've created a block with this type, and again, this block is right here, right here. It's also right here and here. All right. So let's say, for instance, in this one we took this headline, or the sub headline right here, and we put it underneath it, like on this line. Well, let's go ahead and put it over here, because there's a block that's essentially created from this high contrast type layer. So we can put this down. Perhaps we'll fill this all the way out, and we'll put it around 27 or so. And let's get the line height correct for this. Yeah, that'll probably be pretty good. So I'm going to drag it all the way down, and then I'm going to go ahead and put our Lorem Ipsum text, fill with placeholder. All right, I might want to make this so there's just like 3. All right, so let's get rid of those and see what this looks like now. All right, so we can see, again, there's so many blocks that are happening here. So I'm looking at the amount of white space or negative space from the very right to the very left. I think maybe we could bring this in. And I think that looks actually pretty solid. And again, it works well because there is this block that's created by this harsh, the horizontal line of sorts that's created from the bottom of the type, and it just continues all the way through. So if we did something off-centered like that, it wouldn't look as good in my opinion. All right, so now let's do something else. Let's, for instance, take another block and just like overlay it right there. How are we going to work with that? Well, again, there's a block that's created right here. I'll drag this out. And we want to make sure that at least there's an equal amount of white space. It's defined right here from this section. We want to make sure that you have an equal amount of white space, that same amount of white space that's from the bottom of that type to the top of this container that I just added. So we'll scale down slightly, and that's a little bit better. All right, so here, let's put like a photograph. So we'll select it. There's a plugin called Photo Splash that you can get. And we can just put like, I'll put guitar. Maybe we'll choose that one. Nice, okay. So the guitar, actually it's not nice because the top right of that image doesn't contrast well with the background. So choosing your photographs also is another important topic. Guitar. So remember, just try to remember what type of background and colors you're currently working with, something that would perhaps complement it well or contrast it well if you wanted to contrast. I think I will personally, I'll choose that one. Okay. So now we have this graphic here, and we have another block that's created from it. So for instance, I'll just drag this one. It's at the top. And this right here, this whole container, it's now its own container that you can put content in. So I could take this type, and really when you're dealing with a type like this where you have a headline and it's like the most important element, you don't want to have like the same sized element, because then that makes the visual hierarchy suffer. This one, I'm just going to say play that guitar. I don't know. This is completely random. So we're going to make that a little bit smaller. All right, so I think that'll work. Maybe we'll take this block over here. I'm going to get rid of a lot of it just so we have a single line. All right. All right, that works. And then perhaps we will put in a call to action button. Let's say something like watch lesson. Make this quite a bit smaller. And maybe we'll do something like, I don't know, I have an idea as well, an additional idea to really reinforce this block that's created from this type. We can do this. This is just a random design element. It's not required, but it can help reinforce the layout. Just a little, because really the block, like I said, goes around all along this way. I'm just choosing to add this little side element here. And you don't have to make it that color. It could be something less contrast, like that. And I'm just going to create a real quick button just for the fun of it, because I like designing. So we'll put, and again, this is a block that's kind of created from these two elements. Notice that they're right on the same line. This is going to be on the same column as well. And I think maybe we'll use this color. Let's move this out of the way. And now this seems like a pretty good layout, but it seems like it's a couple things maybe a little bit off. Oh, where'd my little thing go over here go? Let me duplicate that. I'm gonna get that back. Where'd it go? Okay. Okay. I think we could take these two elements, or those three elements, and probably push them up a little bit, which then means we can take this element, probably scale it up, and then realign these in the center of that block right there. So hopefully you understand what I'm talking about now. Just think about blocks, think about experimenting by adding different shapes and containers, but making sure you're adhering to proximity, which is your inner white space, or in CSS terms, it would be your padding, because it's inside of your containing elements. And also outside of your elements. I'm always, if you're looking at like the type that's inside of it, how much space or white space is on the outside of it. All right, so Let's do another one, and this time it'll be quite a bit different, and we'll do a light color scheme just to change things up. Now, before we do that, I can't say that objectively this design is better than this design because they both adhere to solid design fundamentals, and that's the most important part. So then at a certain point, it then becomes, well, we have to test this, which is a UX thing, usability testing to see, you know, this one doesn't have the like a call to action button like over here. This doesn't have it, but you would want to compare them to test and see which layout ultimately works. All right, so let's do one other one so I can really hit this home so that everybody understands what I'm talking about. Maybe we'll do like a really light pale blue background. All right. So what we're going to do for this one, we're going to change up how we're specifying choosing a color scheme. I'm going to duplicate that. We'll choose like, I don't know, I think we'll go almost, yeah, kind of like a dark desaturated blue. I'm going to put in, for this one, just choosing. Maybe we'll do all lowercase, choosing. Maybe we'll right align it because just to show you a vastly different example than the other ones. Choosing a color scheme. All right. So I chose to put those on separate layers just because I want to put them on two different lines. And I'm going to de-emphasize choosing by making a color scheme larger. So there's a million different ways that you can feature a headline. So we'll just put it like just randomly right there for now. So remember, you've created a block here. So we have this, we have this, we have this one over here. I'll just have to grab it from here. There we go. And then we also have one right there. All right, so let's put in like a photograph. So first I'll get out a container. And we'll start it here on that block. And let's just put it randomly, I don't know, that size. We may change it up, but I'm just thinking of having a photo underneath the headline. So let's go to our photos and our photo plugin, Photo Splash. And I think we'll use building. All right, that works. I'm fine with that. Okay, so now we've created yet another block. So if we keep on adding these everywhere, which I don't think I'm going to do. I'll just pull this one down here. We've created a block here, right? So now we have a block that's right here. So inside of here, we could probably put some text, maybe some accompanying text along with it. So what we'll do is, I think we'll just have like a headline. And again, we don't want it to compete with these elements, so we're going to de-emphasize it a bit. I'm going to put just become a great designer. Agree at. Okay, designer, there we go. And we'll put it maybe like right there. Next up, we'll put another one, just like a Lorem Ipsum box. Actually, I'll just grab one of these. All right. Again, we'll just use, I'm just going to put black for now. And then let's bring this in a bit. And again, we want to keep that even amount of white space inside of here. And let's right align it as well. So I'm still just kind of looking at the spacing of things. There we go. That looks actually pretty decent right there. Okay. So now it's kind of empty here. So let's just take, I don't know, like a column right here. And let's get the background. And let's just make it slightly darker perhaps, just to fill it out a little bit, like that. All right, so let's get rid of these, because again, those are just for demonstration purposes. And we have a kind of nice little layout that's occurring here. But again, it's a little bit boring. I think we could probably make this large, quite a bit larger. Maybe this element a lot larger. And we'll take this, right click, arrange, send it back. And this is okay if these two intersect because this is very like a watermark element. a watermark container of sorts, so that works. So now we've filled this out a lot more by making this portion larger. Let's do like a longer form layout, just to demonstrate that you can keep on adding. You can keep your design going in this manner. So I want to do something a little bit more unique. We've just been dealing with rectangles essentially. What we're going to try to do is just integrate maybe like a 45-degree angle line that just comes in all the way down, kind of like that. Maybe we'll stop it there. I'm just holding Shift to make sure that all the lines are of 45 degrees. And then let's just make this the same color as our text. All right, which is quite dark, I have to admit. I think I'm going to take all of them, and then we're going to increase it slightly. Okay. So now we have this high contrast element, and inside of it, it's kind of hard to define your different blocks, but really this section right here is a block. Inside of it, it has blocks. And then once we start adding actual content here, you'll see that they create additional blocks as well. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. Right here, I'm looking at the amount of distance between, or the amount of white space between the end of this element, which really is just like this, and this sort of sweeping angle. There's quite a bit of space between it, so I could either choose to, pull that out, or take this up a bit, which means we need to take this out. All right, so that's looking good. Now let's put in, and remember, we still have all these other lines that are created. Like here's a block, we can see it goes straight down. So if we put some content in here, we want to right align it to this column right here. Let's put in maybe like a headline just somewhere right around here. Let's make it white. Make sure it contrasts well. I'm just going to put, I don't know, just a random word here. Fantastic. Okay. All right. So now we can put, let's try adding some text right here. We'll say this is kind of like a magazine style layout. Right click, arrange, bring to front. And again, we want this to contrast well and also left align it because we're lefting align it along this element, or this column rather. We can make this white, or we can grab the background that it's on, but simply push up the value. So it gives it a little bit of color in the same hue as the background, which works. So, all right. Now, this is a block that's created by this A, and I don't believe we are aligned to that. So we can do that. All right, let's remove that. All right, so it looks like we have quite a bit of space down here. So we could probably add more type to correct that. Instead, I think I want to move both of these down. I can make my type larger here, pull this out a little bit, right there. All right, and then let's do another piece of type, maybe right around there. And we've created kind of a container from the top of this element. There's also, we can drag another one beneath this. And we also have one, the one to pay attention to is right here and right here. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to remain inside of this particular box because there's a lot of white space above it. But the ones probably that are most important to pay attention to is probably going to be, let's get rid of this one, are these lines right here. So if we add type, let's say, for instance, we take this and we put it maybe right around there. Maybe this will just be like a quote. So the quote would be like, I thought I was going to die, Okay, something like that. Let's end that quote. All right, let's bring this up, right align it. Maybe we'll put it like right there. Maybe make it larger. All right, so let's get rid of these right there. And now we have kind of an issue because there's quite a bit of white space in the middle section, and I don't really like that. We could push this up, but then it really seems to be scattered all over. If we keep these on the same row, it brings a lot more order to the layout. So we have to ask ourselves, you know, how could we fix this? Well, we could bring this down, and that seems to kind of help fill things out a little bit more. We can increase our line height or bring that down more. I think we can just do the line height option. All right. We can bring this in a little bit further away from this container and perhaps even have a little bit more content here. This could be a button depending on your needs or something else. But now we've kind of filled it out a little bit more. So let's also, let's put in another like Jane Doe. That's who said that, I guess. There we go. Probably make this a little bit smaller. And now I'm just kind of trying to determine, like, oh, can I take this? Why is it selecting that? Oh, there we go. We could possibly just put it right here because this aligns to this container that's created just from this text here. And that way we have an equal amount of white space from the top down to the bottom. So as you can see, it's a lot of experimenting. We could even, I kind of want to move this stuff down, or perhaps just move these elements down. There we go. We could pull this out. And now for the fun of it, let's try adding one final element here. I'm going to put in a photograph, person. Let's put her. And just increase this quite a bit. And notice I'm kind of positioning it so that it encases. There's an equal amount of white space on the top of the fantastic text, and then also the bottom of our last text, our paragraph text as well. Now looking at this, one thing that I realized I kind of don't like, especially if we take, it's always good to take a step away from the computer and also take a look at the whole design as itself, like really zoomed out, so that you can identify anything that might stand out and you know, just not seem to work right. For me, we have the headline, which is this large type, which, you know, it reserves for itself. There's no other type like it. Then we have a subheadline of this size. This type right here is like 230. This is 42. But then we have this subheadline over here. Let me lock this layer so that I can select the one beneath it, or just do that. This one is 106. So really, if we want to maintain consistency visually, we'll make this one the same size as that one as well. I think both of those are a tad bit small, so we can probably stand to increase the size of those just a bit. So now, bring that back up. So now the layout is a little bit more, it flows together a little bit more, and it seems more in balance, so to speak. Move this over here. There we go. All right, so awesome stuff. Here's the 3 designs. Here's the first one. Again, just creating sort of a unique layout. It's pretty simple though. This one where you have several overlapping elements, and you can really see all the blocks that are encasing our important elements, whether they be the photographs or the type. and then that one. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Now, if you're a brand new UI designer, don't get discouraged if you try to make your own UI design after watching this video, utilizing this technique, and it just still doesn't look good. All this stuff takes time and practice. I mean, that's essentially it, and developing that muscle memory to see all of those and witness and to be able to apply all those various UI design fundamentals. All right, so don't get discouraged. Definitely check out for my new UI design course. It's going to be releasing early this year, 2020, once that releases. And it's going to be on scrimba.com, so definitely check that out. All right, make sure to subscribe up, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.